Hey, what's going on? This is Brandon.
This is Dave.
And this is Joshua, and you are tuned into PVD Horror.
Here's a bonus episode for all you to enjoy as we had the privilege to interview writer-director Dallas Jackson.
Dallas is fresh off his Netflix release of Welcome to Sudden Death, starring Michael Jai White, Gary Owen, which he wrote and directed.
Yeah, we also got to talk to him about his previous Netflix film, Thriller. We also went into some of the influences that led to the creation of both films.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy this bonus episode. We'll be back to our regular scheduled show next week.
Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, PVD Horror.
We are here with Dallas Jackson. Dallas, can you talk a little bit about, your background and kind of what brought you into, creating film?
Yeah. So, I've been wanting to be on the path of a filmmaker, quote unquote, since I was a teenager. I think the thing that I always loved, like genre stuff like Alien and Raiders of the Lost Ark and, Star Wars and all that stuff we grew up on, E.T., Battlestar Galactica, all that stuff. Bruce Lee, obviously. But, I think when I was in high school or somewhere around there, my father took me I wanted to go see Hollywood Shuffle. It was like in one theater in Denver. As a matter of fact, I think I was in like 5th grade or 6th grade. I wasn't in high school. And so I just caught wind of this guy, Robert Townsend, and heard about him like making his movie on his credit cards, which was like, what? And my father took me to see Hollywood Shuffle, and it like blew my mind just in terms of like, I had read some stuff, prior to how he got it made. So it's like, okay, here's a guy, he looks like me. He's older, obviously, but like he wrote a movie, he directed it, he starred in it, and he made it for $35,000. That was the legend. Like he put it all on his credit cards. And I'd never seen my father like really laugh in a theater before. Like that was interesting to me. So right there in my mind, I was like, okay, there's a pathway to do this. And that was kind of like when the renaissance of black filmmakers was happening, where like Spike Lee and Keenan Ivory Wayans and, like I said, you had Eddie Murphy, and like all these things were happening that were like beyond just like actors, So for me, that kind of turned the corner for me. And when I went to Howard, years later, I decided to major in TV and film, and then that kind of set me on the path of where where I am now. But those seeds were planted like early as a kid. And I used to go to the video store and just like get RoboCop and Faces of Death and crazy shit.
Right.
Like I'd go to the video store and just see what kind of crazy shit I could rent, Evil Dead, all it's like, the fun of the video store was you could go, take it off the shelf, look at it. Oh, this looks really fucking crazy. I want to rent this. And then, you rent it, go home, watch those 2 or 3 movies, and then come back, return them, and go get some more, Exactly. So that for me was kind of like, I wanted to have a movie on the shelf, go grab, and that was aspirational to me. Anyway, go ahead.
Do you feel like that's why you started with a horror movie as, kind of like your first written and directed by?
Yeah, I mean, well, what's interesting is when I was a kid, I loved this movie, The Last Dragon, right? Like that was like my joint. Bruce Leroy, Show Enough, all of that. Mm-hmm. So some years ago, I got a first look deal with a producer named John Davis, who's done like iRobot and Daddy Daycare, and he's done a bunch of movies. And so I told him I wanted to remake The Last Dragon. And my first look with him was as a writer and as a producer. So he connected me with, I connected with RZA. I told RZA about me wanting to do this, and John Davis helped me like track down the rights to Last Dragon. RZA introduced me to Sam Jackson, and we went to Columbia Pictures. and pitched the idea of rebooting this franchise, or at least rebooting this title and making it a franchise. And they made me a deal to write the script and for Sam to play Sho'nuff. And so, you know, we were on this path. They really responded to the script. The studio did. They got a director, Charles Stone, who did Paid in Full and Drumline. And we were on the path to make the movie. And then Sony had regime change. But what started to happen is they had regime change, and you know, people just kind of didn't pick back up on The Last Dragon for whatever reason. But this script of mine started to kind of float around to different execs and studios, and one of the people that read it was Jason Blum at Blumhouse.
Okay.
And Samuelson, who runs Blumhouse, had me come in, and he was like, you know, why hasn't anyone made this fucking movie? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, you know, well, we obviously can't because we don't have the rights, but do you have, like, we really enjoyed what you did with this. Do you have something that you would like to make, or in, you know, in the horror space? And Thriller was a movie originally titled Homecoming that I had sold to Fox some years back, which was like my Scream, my I Know What You Did Last Summer, my Prom Night.
Right.
Yep.
I always wanted to do a horror movie with black teenagers, black and Hispanic teenagers. It just hadn't been done, which was crazy.
Exactly. Yep.
So based on the strength of The Last Dragon, I was able to get them to read Homecoming, which I changed to Thriller. And they were like, we got this movie called Get Out coming out. We don't know what it's going to do, so stand by. And I went to the premiere of Get Out with RZA. And after the premiere, I ran into Jason Blum, and everybody was going crazy, like, after the premiere of Get Out, because they're just like, you know, people were just like, holy shit. And Jason Blum, I think, was a little surprised by that. And he saw me with RZA, and he was like, is RZA going to be a part of this script we're developing with you? And I just kind of looked at RZA. He was like, sure. And, and Get Out came out like a week later. It did what it did. And they greenlit Thriller for like $1 million. They're like, go take that, go make your movie. We made a deal with RZA to score and be in it. And, you know, we ended up making the movie. And that process led to some other things, including the opportunity for Sudden Death. But Sudden Death came about also because of The Last Dragon.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt like that was probably going to connect. So I guess, you know, do you guys chance to watch that Welcome to Sudden Death? So let's start off with some questions. Brandon, I know you had a few that you want to ask.
Yeah, my main thing was how was it like working with Gary Owens and Michael J. White? You know, how did that connection come together with those two? Because it's like so separate. You know, you have Gary Owens, like I grew up on him, watching him on Comic View and everything like that, you know, and just becoming and being plugged into all these movies. And Michael J. White just having, you know, a lot of funny roles here and there on certain films, and like, you know, like Black Dynamite. And then so now you bring these two together with that connection, you know, I think it worked really well. And then like, how was it like being behind the scenes with those guys?
Well, let me just start with Michael Jai, and then we'll kind of work our way to Gary. When I got the opportunity to make the movie, you know, first the opportunity was presented to me to write it based on The Last Dragon. Then the opportunity was offered to me to direct it based on Thriller. So when I was thinking about who the guy could be, John Singleton, who was a good friend of mine, you know, rest in power.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. You know, that was my guy. We made the show called Rebel together on BET. So he was like my big brother, mentor. And he was like, yo, you gotta get Michael Jai for your Sudden Death remake. And I listened to John. Anything he said, I always listened to it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. He's like, you know, I was like, okay. And so Michael Jai's wife, Gillian White, just happened to go to Howard with me. We've been friends for years. I reached out to her and I was like, you know, can I sit down with Michael? Because we'd met in passing maybe once, but we weren't bros or anything. And so she talked to him about it. We hooked up for breakfast. I had sent the script over in advance. And so he was really responsive to the script, just in terms of him saying, I've never been, which was a surprise to me. He's like, I've never been offered a role like this. I've never been offered a role where I could play a father who's just trying to save his family. Like, you know, and in terms of like, he knows Van Damme, like he knows Van Damme. So he was like, you know, he wasn't really hesitant about it because he felt like the movie wasn't trying to replace the first one. It was just kind of its own thing. But like, he instantly responded. And so once Universal and him made a deal, and I knew he was going to be the guy, we started thinking about who's going to be the sidekick. You know, my first choice, which might not have been, you know, like the right thing, but like I actually went to Fat Joe.
Oh yeah.
I wanted Fat Joe to play Gus. I got the script of Fat Joe. I got on the phone with Fat Joe, which was an interesting conversation. And you know, Fat Joe is coming off of She's Gotta Have It on Netflix, and he's been doing his acting, and you know, and he's kind of funny and he's jolly, you know. So we were talking, and we were talking for like a half hour, and I'm thinking, okay, because he's like, yo, I love Michael Jai, yo, and yo, this would be hot, you know, and I'm thinking like, yeah, okay, great, because my thing was like, you got this martial artist, and then you could have like this fun hip hop guy next to him, right? Yeah. Anyway, so like 30 minutes in, he's like, but yo, I'm about to go on tour. I can't do this, son.
Oh,
I was like, oh, word? Because you just talked to me for like a half hour.
Yeah.
I thought for sure we were about to rock. He's like, nah, man, I can't do it. But he's like, I appreciate it. You know, we'll find something else. I was like, damn. So I'm talking to Mike, and he's like, yo, you know, we should think about Gary Owen. And I was like, dang, that makes a lot of sense. That's really fun and funny. And we started talking about like, you know, it's usually, you know, Lethal Weapon. It's the white guy, and then there's the brother. Like, I'm too old for this shit. Or, you know, it's the black sidekick. You know, it's Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. You know, the black guy is usually the funny guy, and the other guy is the kick-ass guy. You know, so we were talking about the dynamic of being able to have Michael Jai, who I literally think is our Jackie Chan. Like, he does definitely his own stunts. He can definitely act. He's funny when he wants to be. He's a real martial artist, 30 years deep into it. Like, having that guy next to the funny white guy was just an interesting thing that we thought we could do. And so I reached out to Gary. Michael Jai knew Gary. He sent them a DM. They talked. Then Gary and I talked. And then, interesting enough, we had to kind of convince Universal, because they weren't like, they did not understand Gary is like black famous. You know, like
exactly.
Like, white people kind of know. No disrespect, guys. White people kind of know who Gary is, but black people are like, oh, the funny white guy from, you know, Think Like a Man, or like, they know who he is.
Yeah.
Or like you said, like, he was the first white guy in Comic View, right? So it's like,
exactly. Yep.
So people know, like, brothers know who he is. So we had to do a little education with Universal on him, and then they went to like his Instagram. He's got like 2 million. They're like, oh, okay, cool. So once we got to that where we knew it was going to be those two, those guys they already knew each other. They started like to hit it off, and there was just chemistry from there. Things they were working on set, things that they would talk about before we shot a scene, and they would do. There was a lot of times where I would just let Gary do something, and he'd just go crazy, and then I'd say, give me a take where you just give me what I need, and then I'll give you one where you just do your thing.
Yeah.
And so we always found a balance of that. And there were a lot of times, dude, he would just like fucking make Mike cry, like in the middle of like laughing, you know, to the point where we would just have to be like, time out, you know, let's get the giggles out and go back, you know, because he's so funny, and he can definitely improv. So it was a great dynamic between those two, right? Like right from jump. And that's basically how we made it happen. And no disrespect to Fat Joe, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's cool, man. So that brings me to my question. The guys told me not to talk that much because basically I am Gus.
Okay.
Like in this group, I am Gus all the way. And
you were casting.
yeah. So Gus was based on me, right? Like you heard the podcast and you were like, I'm making this character based on Joshua.
I'm gonna roll with you on that.
We'll just go with it. But
we also wanted Fat Joe in the group.
Yeah, we all watched it, and it was funny. Like I was like, did he base this character on me? And all the guys were like, dude, that's the perfect question. So yeah, I'm a big fan of old school like martial arts films and kung fu too, and horror. So your two films together, like they were great for me. Did you have to slow down the fighting in the scenes to make it jive on camera?
No, what we did was that's all captured as it went. But what we did was so we have a brother on our squad named Larnell Stovall, and Larnell is part of a stunt coordinating fight choreography company called 8711. 8711 did all the fights choreography for the Raid 1 and 2. They do all the stunt and fight stuff for the Marvel movies. They did all this fight choreography for Deadpool.
That's cool.
Deadpool 2. So what Larnell does is, and what we did was, him and his crew get the script. We pull out all the fight scenes, and him and his crew choreograph all the fight scenes on video first. So there was about 7 or 8 total fights in Sudden Death. They put those all on video. They send them to me, and in this case sent them to me and Michael Jai. I had worked with Larnell on my show with Singleton Rebel, so I kind of knew how he worked. So he sent the fight scenes to me and Michael Jai. We would give little notes or tweaks for how we wanted to do things. And then prior to, while we were in pre-production, we did a 2-week fight camp where we had Michael Jai, all the fight guys in the movie, the security guards and all that, the bad guy security guards, and they would watch the video and then practice the fights. And they did that for like 2 or 3 weeks, including Michael Jai's stunt double, who gets no work because, not no work, but like he gets no time because Michael Jai's always like, but we had to have Jasper also learn just in case we needed him to stand in for Mike.
Right.
And they practice each scene. So when we get to the shoot, like the day of that, to shoot that fight, whichever one it is, let's say the locker room, the 3-on-1, those guys already know it. They're just dancing. A fight movie is a dance movie. It's just knowing your moves, knowing your partner's moves, and then knowing what hit works for the camera best. So there's 3 cameras. This camera might capture this one better. This camera might get this hit better or this kick better. So you're just figuring out which camera angles. So you do the it's called previs. So you previs the fights first, put them on video. Then we had the fight camp, and then we went right to shooting the fights. And that kind of saves you time because you can't be on set with a certain budget. And we only had that arena for like 23 days or something like that. So you can't waste time on set like learning how to fight, learning to fight. Got to know it when you get there. And that's what we did. And so all those fights you see are captured as we shot them. There might be a few things in edit we did to rack or cut away real fast or something so it might look faster or something. But those guys are really like operating in real time as you see those fights.
Okay.
Yeah, those are some badass scenes, man.
All right, so like you said, you brought up a lot of big names, like Keenan Ivory Wayans, Robert Towns. Like, how do you feel as a African-American director, in the horror genre and in comedy and action? How do you feel about that? How's that going?
Well, look, man, it's going pretty good so far right now, but it's taken me some years to get here. Writing has opened up the doors to me to direct. If I didn't start out writing, I wouldn't be, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
So, I think it's important that we, create and write, because all the greats, the people that have succeeded in this business started out as writers. Keenan Ivory Wayne, Steven Spielberg, Stallone wrote Rocky for himself. Stallone's a hell of a writer, dude. People don't give Stallone enough credit, but like First Blood, dude, he wrote First Blood. Come on. I think he wrote like Rocky 3. I mean, come on. Anyway, writing is a vehicle to open other doors. And I think for me as a black director, and even directors in general, I don't think you can look for an opportunity to just fall into your lap. You have to create it. Even Tarantino, when he wrote Reservoir Dogs, like had to go get $100,000 to make that movie. He only shot it for $100,000, but he wrote it first, and then he was like, I want to make this. So I think for us and for any filmmaker, but in particular as a black director, black writer, I'm trying to push boundaries and do things that necessarily haven't been done or aren't done a lot for whatever reasons. And, right now I'm just trying to prove myself as being able to create a story and deliver it. Here you go. You can put that out in the market now. And hopefully that will continue to create opportunities that I can write and direct and open doors for bigger opportunities. But for me, like my focus specifically is action, horror, sci-fi. Those are the things that I want to, stay in. And to a certain degree, I think for me, at least so far, interjected some fun into what I'm doing. I injected some fun into Thriller. I injected some fun into Welcome to Sudden Death. It's not just like a straight like Taken horror movie. I mean, Taken action movie. There's some fun into it, and that's not for everybody. But I do like movies where there's a little bit of something of everything in it, even though the genre and you stay true to it. I like to just kind of make people smile, maybe before you get killed or whatever, or before
I love it.
Even and Welcome to Sudden Death, the chick blows her head off, and then Gary has a really fun line like, "That was a crazy bitch," So like, there's little things I like to do. But to get back to your original question, I'm sorry. It's really just about me trying to put myself into a genre space, which there aren't a lot of us in. Yeah. And in order to do that, I've had to write those opportunities.
Yeah. I think that's great. And one of the things I kind of appreciate is from your films, like like you said, like the crossing genres, it's not just one thing you're going for, but you're like mixing multiple genres together. Even with Thriller, you got horror, but then you got like kind of teen drama at the same time. It's like, I definitely see what you're going for. And I appreciate that. You're not just going for like the really straightforward direction. I
appreciate that, man, that you recognize that. Yeah, like Thriller for me was a couple of things. Thriller was Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and blah blah blah. But also too, just like my love for like Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller and Pretty in Pink. Like I love those movies, and they weren't very diverse, but I understood them because they spoke to certain things that we all inherently feel when we're teenagers. And I would discover those movies years later after they came out in the video store or cable or whatever. But like that was some stuff I was trying to sprinkle in Thriller on top of the other stuff. And even with Welcome to Sudden Death, to a certain degree, it's an action movie. There's moments of comedy. It's also just like a family movie. I mean, like weirdly enough, like my kids are like, they love it, because there's kids in it that are like speaking to each other and being smart asses to adults, which kids always love.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like daddy saving the kids, and kids love that. fantasy. So yeah, there's always a little bit of something I'm trying to sprinkle in on top of staying true to like the genre that we're trying to hit.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, like I told you, after I watched the film, I had messaged you and I told you did it, you killed it on it, and I was gonna have to run it back with my kids because I know my kids will enjoy that film too.
Sure.
So
yeah, probably more than you.
So speaking of kids, I just gotta tell you, I watched Thriller with my daughter who's 16 and her squad, and so I'm watching it with a bunch of teenage girls, and there was one scene in the movie. They're all on their phones and like they look up, they look down, and there was one scene with the character in Thriller, the sister Kim, and she's in the mirror, and all of a sudden she's talking, and this like it threw everybody for a loop. We actually had to rewind it, watch it again. It was like, what the? And then we had rewound it, watch it again when she starts talking to herself and she's like, I miss you. And all of a sudden she talks like the sister. Mm-hmm. Dude, what was up with that? That got everybody's attention real quick in that.
Well, yeah, that's cool. I'm glad it kind of freaked you out. There's some people that are like, what the hell's going on? And there's other people that are like, oh, she's crazy. Yeah, and what's interesting is when we shot that scene that day, the actress Peppy, her real name is Peppy. She was like, "So how do I do this? Like, what am I doing?" And I'm like, "Your sister was killed. Mm-hmm. Your sister died. You saw her die, and in your mind, you're so traumatized by that." And you've kept her alive in your mind. And so, like all little kids have an imaginary friend, your imaginary friend is your sister, except for you talk back to her. You talk to each other in your mind. And she was like, oh, okay, I got it. So that was her thing, is she's talking to her sister. Her sister's dead, but in her mind, because she's so screwed up from it, the sister is still alive in some weird way. Yep. Now, I wanted to also do that just to let you know that this chick is crazy, and it's usually the hot ones that are a little crazy. Like you think you got a winner, and you're like, damn, she's fine, but she's crazy as hell, which is like real life. Like you get super hot chick, and then all of a sudden, there's little things you're like, this chick is crazy. And I wanted to push that extreme a little bit with her. But that's what that was. And I was trying to do little things in the movie so you couldn't exactly like, maybe at some point you go, oh, maybe she's the killer because I saw her do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So that was just a red herring. But really, everyone in that movie has a problem from that moment. So, she talks to her sister. The main girl has nightmares because she knows the truth. The one kid acts hard, but he's really soft as jelly. Yep. One kid is actually the killer because he's screwed up from that day. So he's killing his friends. Like they all have their little quirk from that day, and that was hers.
Yeah, I love that. After I watched that, I like kind of how it started and seeing some of it play out. I was like, oh, prom night. And then you said prom night as we started this. So I was like, all right, I was pretty, I wasn't wrong on that. So I was like thinking of all these like films from, that I've experienced over the past that have like kind of shaped my love for horror. And you encompass so many in this one film. So like, I just wanted to ask you, like, so I know you mentioned a few already, but like what films really did like kind of mold your love for horror? I know you mentioned Evil Dead earlier as like one you would see in like the, the video shop or whatever, but like what ones really stand out to you as kind of like the ones that kind of inspired you to make this film and kind of like molded your love for this genre?
Well, I'll tell you the ones that fucked me up and then we'll go backwards. So the Exorcist fucked me up. Like I had to sleep with my mom like 3 days. And I saw it on network TV. I don't know what the hell. The Exorcist was like on CBS one night. I was like 9. And my mom was like, "Don't watch that." And I was like, "Ah." And I watched that shit, and I like had to get in my mama's bed. My pops was like, "Yo, what the hell?"
That's classic.
Sandwiched in between them, like, "Yo, I can't sleep by myself." The Evil Dead fucked me up for real. Like the tree like raped the chick. I was like, I didn't understand what was going on. But there was like so many things, like all the devilish dialogue going on and the book reading itself backwards, like all this stuff fucked me up, and not in a good way, but like later on in a good way. I Spit on Your Grave was something I should have never rented.
We just talked about that the last podcast, man.
Yeah,
That's
we
a good
did.
movie.
Oh, bro, I Spit on Your Grave is like, yo, who greenlit this? This is
Yes, I know.
this is so sick.
Yeah, it was funny because we just did an event, and then the people that were hosting it, they was like, "Yeah, we don't want I Spit on Your Grave. We don't want any of that."
Yeah, we don't want any rapey. But so there are things that disturbed me, where it's kind of like you want to keep dipping your toe back in the water, But really, what like is like in my heart, that really made me fall in love with this stuff is John Carpenter. Like, love Halloween. There's a lot of Halloween in Thriller. Just stepping from behind the tree, or coming from the shadows, or things like that. Like, that's all Michael Myers' original Halloween stuff. I'm just, Escape from New York is like in my heart. Like that I watch that till the fucking wheels fall off. Christine is,
classic.
part time, one of my favorite movies, on the planet. And it's just so relatable. Like, I had a 68 T-Bird in high school. It was my parents' car, and they gave it to me. And I fixed that car up. Like, I tricked it out. I put a CD player in it, booming speakers, and used to make out with chicks in that car, all kinds of stuff, man, where like I put my soul in that car. And so Christine is like, I'm that dude, Mom, if anything happens to me and my T-Bird shows up, you know what's up. So like John Carpenter to me is just like that's like, I love Spielberg, but that's my Spielberg, so that was John Carpenter, and I, is a huge influence for me, who I caught on later. Like, I'm, like it's video store, cable later, then going to do homework and find out who this guy is. And then like thinking like, who's the John Carpenter of today? Like, there isn't one. I guess, you could point at certain things or whatever, or you could say like Jordan Peele is like the whatever he's becoming of whatever, right? But John Carpenter is his own thing. Like Stephen King's his own thing, right? I'm a huge Stephen King fan as well, more so than the books, because a lot of the film adaptations are just funky. But like every once in a while they get one right. But like, that for me was the things that started to get me in love with the horror genre, particularly Carpenter.
Okay.
Like I'll go on YouTube and go down a rabbit hole of John Carpenter videos just to hear him talk and see what was on his mind. Yeah, for sure.
That makes me want to ask you another question, it kind of along the lines of Carpenter. But so I listened to the Thriller soundtrack, and I'm a huge RZA fan, so that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you, what that, getting to be friendly with him the way that you are, what that's like. But also, did you have some influence on kind of like the soundtrack that he provided the soundtrack for Thriller, right? So
yeah, he scored the movie, and then he also like provided artists and stuff for the soundtrack. So there's the score.
Yeah.
But RZA scored it, and then there's the soundtrack, which are like songs from the movie. And there's a few on the soundtrack that weren't in the movie, but only like 2.
And the score sounded like it had a little bit of like Carpenter influence in it. And I listened to both, but when I listened to the score, I was like, I wasn't really expecting that from something RZA would produce. I was kind of wondering, did you have some influence on that, or did he kind of just come up with that based on the vibe of the movie?
Well, yeah, both. Yes, on both. So once we knew he was going to score it, first of all, I had to wait for a long time on that score. I was like, yo, is he really going to score it? What's going on? And then finally, first we had a conversation, and he and I both mutually love a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
And like we both mutually obviously love martial arts movies. Right. We both have a mutual love of horror movies and genre stuff. And so when I said, he said, what do you want this to sound like? And I said, I want it to sound like Halloween.
Okay.
Like I need that. I need that Halloween. I need that Escape from New York. Like Escape from New York score is ill.
Yeah.
Halloween 2 score is ill. That's all Carpenter. So he said, okay. So I think the last thing I needed for the movie we were waiting on is the score. I waited for some weeks, and Blumhouse was like, "Is he really gonna? Should we get somebody else?" And I'm like, "I don't think he would do that to me." And so it was just he was doing a few things at once. So he finally goes, "I got some stuff for you to hear. Come to the house." Okay, so he lives like an hour from me here, and I live in LA. He lives way out in the valley. So I go to his house, we go to the studio, and he starts to play some stuff. And it's like, damn, was Carpenter here with you? Like, this is crazy. He's like, this is what you wanted, right? And I'm like, dude, this is fantastic. Yes, of course. And then he started to play stuff because he plays the keys. He plays, he plays. So he said, he brought this keyboard out, and he goes, this is one of the tools Carpenter uses. He's like, I did some homework. And so then he starts to play it. I'm like, oh my God, I damn near passed out. But it was definitely RZA's interpretation of a John Carpenter score. So it was definitely intentionally influenced by that, because that's what I asked for and that's what he went for. And so that's what we got, and it's beautiful, and it's it's on iTunes and some other stuff, but I don't think it gets it never got like the full shine I think it should get. Maybe one day it will.
Yeah.
I agree with you. One day we have to figure out some way to really shine a light on that soundtrack, on that score in particular, because it's so good that I might use that shit again somewhere else.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and I wonder if that has something to do with it being a Netflix film as opposed to being in a big box office. If that has some kind of influence over how it gets out there, but it's definitely overlooked. So I hope that people do kind of give it a listen and kind of have that appreciation. And kind of knowing this background now, I want to go back and listen to it even more, because like I said, I listened to it and I was like, this has like a John Carpenter feel. But even hearing the development of it, that's great.
Yeah, I have a playlist of mine, and one of them is movie soundtracks, and I just have a bunch of movie soundtracks like Escape from New York and Halloween and the Last Dragon, all of these classic soundtracks, and some of them are scores, and I've added my own into there, Thriller, and now Welcome to Sudden Death. But when a piece of the Thriller soundtrack or the score pops up, I know it right away, and it's so unique and dope that I've just kind of started to just listen to it more and more on its own. And I usually listen to those things while I write to get some influence and buzz. And it's such a great score to listen to while you're being creative, man. It's dope.
Yeah.
Or while you roll up a fatty and you're about to play some games or some shit, listen to that RZA score, yo.
Yeah.
All right, you heard it here. You gotta you gotta listen to this, man.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a question. Would you mind if we get into a little spoiler territory with Thriller? That's totally your.
Either way, yeah, we can talk
Okay.
about
Cool.
spoilers.
Yeah. So he was asking for me so I had a spoiler question. You know, I really like the twist in that movie. Like as it goes, like you're thinking Kim's not right, so maybe like it was her sister, you know, and is she the killer? But then the killer's huge, right? So at the end, you know, big spoiler. So if you haven't seen it, watch it and then come back and listen to the rest of this. It turns out to be Derek at the end, right? The character Derek, and you think it's Chauncey all the way up. So then Chauncey running in to save the day really kind of fucked with me at the end, and I was like, what the hell? But then afterwards, like it was weird because Derek was caught, and then there's Chauncey with the smile, and I'm like, dude, was it him all along? And that really made you second guess like the whole film. And then I wanted to go back and watch to see if like maybe Chauncey was the killer and this guy just took the rap at the end. And I thought that was dope. So how did you come up with that, and what's the story behind that?
So the story behind it is these kids had always fucked with Chauncey. You know, the mythology when we come into the movie, when we first hear it, is they're like, you know, let's get him. We're always messing with this kid, right? Like we've been doing this. We're just going to take it to another level this time. And, you know, things go awry and it ends up, you know, resulting in a death. But they've always messed with Chauncey. And what we see is that when we meet Chauncey, it's like he's really a good kid. Yeah. He gives the homeless guy his hot dog. He offers to help the girl go in and save, you know, help find her cat. And then they just do this god-awful thing and that results in a death. And they blame it on him. So fast forward, you know, Chauncey gets out. He's Mike Tyson now in terms of like his mentality. He's huge. And what Derek decides to do is the same thing they were doing as kids. Fuck with Chauncey and blame it on him. Except for except in his mind, as I said, everybody's now has a quirk from that death. His thing is, I'm going to kill them because I blame them for killing my first love, and I'm going to blame it on Chauncey, just like we blamed it on Chauncey the first time. So his thing is, I'm going to kill. I've been waiting for Chauncey to get out. Chauncey's out now. I'm going to plant these little seeds to make you think Chauncey's out for revenge. Now, on the flip side, because Chauncey was locked up, he is crazy. He does choke his mama. You know, he is pissed off. You know,
he drinks ketchup.
Yeah, ain't no food in the fridge. He's drinking ketchup. He's a little salty. And so, you know, he's following these kids around because in a weird way, he was part of this clique. He was part of this group. He was just the one that they bullied. So he's following his clique around. He's watching these kids. And Chauncey knows, at least at some point without us showing it, oh, they're trying to do the same thing to me again. They're trying to frame me. When that cop comes and says, Chauncey, where were you? Blah, 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 I got killed. I think Chauncey's smart enough to go, oh, you know what? They're trying to set me up again. So I'm going to keep an eye on things. And when he has that moment to intervene, I don't think, at least from my perspective, right, I don't think Chauncey's intervening to save a life. He's intervening to show that he's been innocent the whole time. He intervenes because it's like, I'm about to stop this from happening again, and I'm going to show you it was really them the whole time. And, you know, it kind of is the payoff at the end where she apologizes to Chauncey. for them doing it years ago because she knows that all this stuff has happened because of what they did years ago. Chauncey doesn't necessarily accept the apology. And I think, if I was to do a sequel, I would further explore the idea of now Chauncey taking on his own revenge.
Okay.
Dude, awesome.
Okay, y'all did this to me. I finally got you. I got everybody. I got the air cleared. Now I'm gonna do my thing.
Yeah.
'Cause y'all, you basically screwed up my life, right?
Yeah.
Not to give any spoilers away for part 2, because I might put a twist in that.
Yeah.
I already know what that twist is.
Ooh, so it's in the works?
I have that worked out. If they come to me and say, let's do a Thriller 2, I know what that story is.
Okay.
But long answer to your question is that I think Chauncey was trying to vindicate himself to a certain degree. And also, everybody's got a quirk from that day. Chauncey's also now got a quirk from that day. He screwed up.
Yeah, man. It was cool at the end when he was like, you killed both of us that day. I was like, dude, that was a line right there that made the movie, dude.
Right. And just to touch on something, when that movie premiered in the theater at the LA Film Festival in September of 2018, that's where we had the world premiere. We had the red carpet and all that. And that theater went crazy, man. Like throughout the whole movie, the theater was packed. John Singleton was there, RZA was there, Jason Blum was there. Like they all got to see, like, damn, you got something, kid, because the theater was really reacting. And there were some execs there. There were some execs there from Sony Pictures, and there were some execs there from a couple other places, Lionsgate, BET, and there's some execs there from Netflix. And a couple days later, or maybe like a week later, Blumhouse was like, yo, we might have to go with Netflix. And I'm like, but dude, we got Sony, we got, there were little nibbles of people going, they wanted to acquire the movie. And Blumhouse was like, Netflix is coming with not only the budget back, but some more money.
Yep.
Right? So it's kind of like a no risk already.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then because this was heading in towards the holidays when we were finally making this decision towards the end of 2018. The thing that I kind of finally got my head around was like, Netflix is worldwide. Netflix is like, you can watch it anytime, any place. It's not in the theater for a few days. You can watch it all day, at night, in the morning when you wake up. And it presented an opportunity for me to just kind of get into that wheelhouse. So I did want it in the theater. I think we had an opportunity to get it in the theater for sure. But Netflix is just a monster. When they come and they're like, we want to cake you off. We want to buy your movie. Blumhouse is going, I'm going to get my money back because they paid for it. Blumhouse paid for the movie out of their pocket. But then it also opened the door for me, I think, because then it's like, okay, he delivered. The movie's on Netflix. And it still has a life. It's still, people are still, especially in the pandemic, it shot up to popular again. So there's just a new world that I embraced with that.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted it to hit the theater, I think it's had a different kind of life and maybe a better life on Netflix. Like you watching it with your daughter. You didn't have to go to pay-per-view or anything. You just clicked on Netflix and watch it. And that's kind of an interesting concept now that we've embraced, especially now in this pandemic where,
exactly.
I think more people will be welcome to sudden death now. It was supposed to do a theatrical whatever, and the pandemic hit, and that was around March, and they knew automatically, Netflix was already involved, so it pushed back the premiere from June to now, and I think now it just presents a more opportunity for more eyeballs. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So actually, I think kind of what you were going with telling us about Chauncey and maybe getting his revenge. This brings me on kind of like a segment that we wanted to introduce to you, which is Josh does on our social media horror icon throwdown, and we were hoping that we could do some hypothetical throwdowns with Chauncey, and kind of think about what kind of like what villains, horror movie villains, you could see Chauncey going against, and who do we think would match up well against him? So I don't know, I don't know if you had anyone to throw out there, or Josh, Brandon, if you guys had one that you want to start us off with?
Well, let me just say this first of all. Let's talk about Chauncey's advantages, and then we'll throw out who can match up.
Yeah. Chauncey's a big dude.
Yeah, definitely. He looks huge, man.
So Chauncey has jailhouse strength, right? Because he's been working out for like 4 or 5 years straight. He's got super street smarts because he lives in Compton. So his street smarts are off the hook. He drinks ketchup, so he's just ruthless. He's ruthless. Who drinks ketchup? Come on, man. That means you can endure almost anything. And he can sustain a high tolerance for violence. Now, the first time we see Chauncey, his shirt is off. He's got all kinds of shank wounds. Like there's a scar here, there's a scar here. So he's been through some shit and he survived. So he's got a high tolerance for violence and physical harm. So that's his strength. So let's lay that out and then we can go.
So I have one that comes to mind right away. This is one that a lot of people don't appreciate. And, we had a discussion recently, but Rob Zombie's version of Michael Myers comes to mind. Because
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, he's huge. He's brutal. He's definitely seen some things in his day. He's probably drinking ketchup on the side. I don't know yet. So, but what he lacks is the street smarts. So I think Chauncey has a little bit of an edge on Rob Zombie's Michael Myers, although that dude was pretty freaking brutal, though.
Yeah, he might be a little more violent than Chauncey.
Yeah,
just a little. But that would be a good throwdown. That would be a very good throwdown. I think Jason Voorhees would be a good matchup. The disadvantage to Chauncey would be, which Jason Voorhees are we dealing with? Because he would think he'd be through with them, and
he comes right back.
Would pop back up.
Yeah.
So he'd have to really like stomp his head into cement, into pancake fashion to make sure he couldn't come back. But I think Voorhees could be a good one.
I think you would have an advantage over the Jason in Part 5, who is actually not Jason. And
Roy.
Roy. So he's got the size. He's got the size. Human. So right there, he's got a chance.
Especially with the same twist, because we were thinking Chauncey was the killer the whole time, and it wasn't. So they have that similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that case, Roy would get his ass whooped.
Hands down.
Yeah, hands down. Wait, quick question. Which Jason? What number of Friday the 13th was with little Tommy? Was that 4?
Yeah, that was 4.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But that was Voorhees, and then Tommy, little Tommy, killed him.
Yep.
And then 5 is Tommy grown up, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and then he goes against that guy Roy. Yeah.
Yeah. So Roy would get served up for sure. By God. Yeah.
I got one more I want to pose to you. And if you guys have any, we can wrap that up. But have you ever seen was it See No Evil with the wrestler? What is it, Kane?
Kane.
Yeah, Kane.
You guys have wrestled.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good matchup.
He's pretty huge. He's like you said, he's violent. But you know what? Chauncey's got the street smarts. He's got the intelligence, and I think he's probably, Kane's been kind of locked up. So I think that Chauncey would have a little bit of an advantage there. I don't know.
Chauncey would have to lure Kane into Compton. He can lure him. If he could lure him into his home turf,
Yep.
I think Chauncey has the advantage. Now here's a little just Easter egg from an old script. So originally Chauncey he had a weapon, and his weapon was the club. The first time he encounters Easy, the little gangster dude who the first guys that we see get taken out, Chauncey, the real Chauncey, they're talking shit to Chauncey like they are in the movie. I taken this out because it felt dated. But the real Chauncey, these had just shown back up on the block, like in the movie. Remember when they were teasing Derek, and then Chauncey walks through, and they're like, "Yo, what the fuck? Look at this dude!" Blah blah blah. Right? Chauncey goes over to this car, punches out the window, snatches the club. Remember the club on the steering wheel?
Yeah.
Snatches the club off the steering wheel and beats the shit out these gangsters with it. And Derek is like, oh, shit. He goes back to school. He's like, yo, I seen Chauncey beat up Derek with the club. He snatched the club out the car. So later on, in the script, we would see this hooded figure with the club, and that was his weapon. But it was Derek mimicking what he saw Chauncey do.
Yeah.
All right.
So saying all that to say that Chauncey has a secret weapon we did not bust out, which is the club. And we came up with all these fun things to do with the club, to kill somebody with it.
Right.
It was one of those old school clubs that fit on the steering wheel and had the hook, had the hook on each side. And anyway, we took it out because it felt dated, and we just went with the good old fashioned brute strength, and he just twist your neck or throw you off of some shit or whatever.
Okay.
That's cool.
I hope if you do a sequel, I do hope the club makes a return, because I think that would be pretty hilarious. I love that.
I wanted to, we wanted to have, Freddie had his fingers, and, Voorhees usually had an axe or whatever. What can we do that's hood, but can be used as a weapon? And we had this whole club gag going on.
Yeah.
And I think it was Blumhouse was so.
Yeah.
I can see it going over a certain generation's head, but I definitely think a lot of us would get the reference and appreciate it for sure.
Absolutely.
Josh, did you have any more?
Special drop for you guys on the podcast.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Josh, do you have any more questions?
There was one. So I noticed Vanessa Williams was in the movie. She was in Candyman and Ice Spiders, which are two of my favorite, and I have loved her forever. What was she like to work with?
Oh man, she was super sweet, man. And the shame part of it is, I've thought she's been hot forever myself, and just kind of iconic in her own way, because you go,
yeah, definitely.
You go Vanessa Williams. You go, which one? The one from New Jack City. Oh, that Vanessa Williams, because she was the one in New Jack City that was, she got wet up trying to protect Ice-T at the wedding. And she had a couple iconic lines in New Jack City. But anyway, the tragic thing was we only had her for 2 days because the part of the mom wasn't very big. And she was like, you got to, give me some more stuff to do in this movie. And I'm like, I know, I really wish, I could just expand her part. But she was super sweet, man. And, we did talk about some of the other horror movies she had been in, and just some of the stuff she did, her whole thing in New Jack City was rock-a-bye, baby. And then she would bust a rap at your ass, So yeah, man, she was fantastic. And, some people would read that and go, Vanessa Williams, and they would think the other Vanessa Williams, but it's super cool that you already knew. I mean, obviously you've seen it, but you were a fan of that Vanessa Williams.
Yeah.
Because Candyman is, it's Candyman. It's iconic. And
right?
You go back and you look at that. Here's another Easter egg for you, just since you brought that up. So RZA plays the principal in the movie. Originally, RZA was going to play the detective, and I had met with Tony Todd to play the principal. Yeah. And he and I sat down, and I didn't want to make him audition or anything. Like, I was ready to give it to him. And then Michael T. Williamson, who's a really good friend, was like, hey, man, you're doing this movie with Blumhouse. You know, I just did The Purge with them, and Michael T. was in my show Rebel. He's like, why didn't you offer me anything in it? And I was like, oh, I got this principal role. But the principal role and the detective role didn't shoot the shot at different times. So I switched RZA over to the principal. Yeah. Michael T. Williamson, Bubba Gump, ended up being the detective. And I had to tell Tony Todd, I will promise I will find something with you.
Dude, that's awesome, man. You went out for your friend and gave your friend the part and told Tony Todd, like, nah, man, I gave it to my friend. Peace out. Dude, that's awesome. It felt bad, though, because I spent, it was like the Fat Joe story, right? Like, I spent 30 minutes with Tony Todd. I was, in my mind, I'm like, dude, Candyman as the principal will be crazy. Yeah. And, it came down to, how do I make this work? One legend with another legend. And it just so happened Blumhouse was just like, look, you got to put Michael T in it. And I was like, you're right. I got to put Michael T in it. Because at that time he had just done the last Purge with them, and he was getting ready to do another movie with them, and they wanted to keep him in the family, and he was already in my family, so it worked out for the best. I'm gonna find something with Tony Todd.
Well, we look forward to that because we're all Tony Todd fans, so that's awesome.
Like I said, man, Dallas, you've been killing it with everything, with your directing, your writing. And now, you get that whole project coming up with 50 Cent and T.I. doing that, man. You're doing big things. And I know we're talking about the whole T.I. and 50 Cent's verses, and I know you're working with those guys. Who are you going to take for the versus battle if those two ever collided?
I can't choose, man. I don't want the goons to show up at my house. Somebody's goon's going to show up. I mean, look, it will be a great versus. Both of them, which people might not know, they're both super smart guys. Obviously, you have to, at this point in the game where you kind of transcend music and you're like both iconic in your own way. You have to be super smart because you've gotten yourself there. They're both super smart. And different behind what you would think that they are, particularly 50. 50's not like a big bully like he is on IG or just like this kind of reckless guy. He's super smart. And so musically, they've both made some really great choices. I mean, look, 50's whole first album is Dre. Damn near. So that's like, but I'm not going to say nothing, man. I'm not going to say nothing, man. I don't want to get caught up in that. But I'm pretty much convinced that versus might not happen. So, because there's just so much ego there. But, if I had to put my money on a winner, it might have to be Tip just because he has a little bit of a bigger catalog.
Yeah. And I think, if I had to choose a winner, I think everyone's a winner, because just having those two collide, and then just bringing everything that they have, with 50, venturing out. They both venture out, and then now them doing this show with you, I think is awesome, and it's good for the community, and it's good for, kids to look up to and then see that they can become something else and then do something. Especially with you, you're opening doors for African-American kids to come up and know that they can become directors and writers and everything like that. So, man, I appreciate that.
Oh, man, that's awesome for you to say that. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, the great thing about the 50 and T.I. project is it's basically about this guy Derek Parker. It's based on his life, but it's not a biography or anything. But Derek became NYPD detective when he was 26. So he was one of the youngest detectives to ever be promoted to detective at that age, and he was a brother. So what started happening was he started getting cases dealing with the hip hop culture because he was part of the culture. Like when he wasn't at work, he was at the club. You know, he had on a chain. He would hang out with Busta Rhymes or whatever, and people didn't know he was a cop until something went down, and he'd have to take out his gun and badge. And so it's really a show about this guy who's a really good detective because his father was a detective, and he grew up just watching his father work, and he's absorbed all that. But he's also aligned with the culture, and he wants to be a hero to the community. And even to the point where he'll step out of line with what the cops will do and do what's right for his own community. So that's what we're doing with that, and it's great to have those two involved because they're both superstars. They're both, I think, in their own way, positive role models. 50's doing so much stuff on TV that you gotta admire it. Tip is starting to be like kind of the civil rights activist in his own way, on top of all the stuff he's doing. So yeah, it'll be a super cool show, man. And we want to do something kind of dark and edgy, and really music based in terms of not the music industry, but like injecting super cool stuff into it musically. So yeah, man, I'm excited for that. That's COVID willing, we'll be shooting that early next year.
Okay, cool. Can't wait to check that out.
Yeah. So Dallas, I know we got to wrap up, but I just wanted to see, was there anything else that you kind of have coming down the road for us, or what do you want us to look out for?
Well, we obviously got Welcome to Sudden Death out right now on Netflix. Thriller out right now on Netflix. I'm working on, I don't want to say too much about it without jinxing it, doing this prison action movie I wrote. That's kind of my homage to the prison action genre, much like some of these other things have been my homage to certain things, with a big twist to it. So I'm hoping that I'll be shooting that towards the end of the year. They're working out everything now. And there's a few other things. I'm writing a comic book right now with Joe Casey, who created Ben 10. So we're working on something right now that's really kind of in the sci-fi realm and dealing with orphans of Black and Brown coming from urban communities and kind of being experimented on. So that's something cool that we're working on. And I just closed a deal to do my own podcast with Blumhouse called Shady Tales.
Nice.
And,
cool, man.
That will be part scripted original stories and part interview guests. So I might have to have you guys come on because you guys are all horror genre experts. And that'll be one part interview and then one part we'll do an original story.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That is awesome.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. So Dallas, that all sounds like amazing things, man. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. You are, you're doing big things, but you are clearly much more than just what you're doing. You're very much an intellectual individual, and this has been such an eye-opening conversation. So thank you for taking this time to talk with us. Appreciate that.
Thank you for having me, guys. It was fun. Take care. Stay safe.
Hey, man, I have one more question. No
more questions.
Yo, man.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I know you're from LA, so are you a Lakers fan?
Yeah, I am a Lakers fan because when I moved to LA, I was 20 years old, fresh out of college, and Kobe just got here. He had just got here, and a year later they brought Shaq. And so my 20s is bro.
Yeah, get him out of here, man.
Hey, man, I'm not mad at you. It's Kobe and Shaq. Now, I will say this too. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
I left Denver when I was 17 to go to Howard, but I grew up a Nuggets fan, so I was really rooting in my heart for the Nuggets.
That was a tough,
Yeah.
tough matchup.
It was nice to see them put the smackdown on the Clippers.
Mhm.
I was a little hurt what happened with the Lakers, but I kind of expected it.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say Lakers take this finals all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, tonight. Can't wait. Yeah, I'm a big Lakers fan, so what do you think it's gonna be? Lakers and what?
I'm gonna say it goes Game 7, man. I'm gonna
Think
say
so?
it goes all the way because the Heat ain't no joke either.
No, they're not.
They're gonna be
They're not playing around.
They're gonna be playing with a purpose because they're looking at LeBron on the other side.
Mhm.
We can't let the dude who came here and got rings leave us without getting a ring. But I think the Lakers take it.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry for your Celtics, homie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. I don't mind if the Lakers beat them after that series. That was a tough one. They're doing good this season.
Yeah, they got to do this for Kobe.
Yeah.
They do this for Kobe.
Yep.
And
Kobe.
by the way, just like my Nuggets, your Celtics, they win as far as they could go, and the next thing is the next thing. So you can't be mad at that season.
No, for sure.
No.
I'll win next season. But Dallas, man, again, appreciate this. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. And like you said, everybody check out Thriller, check out Welcome to Sudden Death on Netflix currently, and just look out for his upcoming projects. And have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, guys. I'll come back for the next one.